All righty, welcome everybody to the cybersecurity defense for small businesses webinar with myself, Brad White. I'm your host, CEO of VARC Solutions, and we also have Jason Denton, who's the CEO of Reliable Technology Services here. And we've got a great webinar for you today. We're going to talk a little bit about, obviously, cybersecurity. We're going to talk about, countermeasures, things you can do about it. We'll talk a little bit about QuickBooks as well, and how this whole cybersecurity might impact that for you. But first off, welcome Jason to the webinar today. Thanks for joining. Thanks for coming.
Well, first of all, yeah, welcome everyone and thank you for coming to this call. And Brad, I just want to say thank you for the invitation. We're so grateful for our affiliation with VARC Solutions. We personally use you guys' services when we have a problem with our QuickBooks, and are so glad to recommend VARC to all of our clients. So thank you for having us today.
Same here. Perfect. Well, we've got a really, I think, a great hour here for everybody to learn a lot more about current trends, things like that. And so I'll pull up the agenda here in just a second. But also just want to let people know that this webinar is also eligible for CPE credit for 1 hour of CPE. And basically what that requires is active participation throughout the entire hour. We will pull up at least 3 different polls that we expect you to participate in. And for those that need CPE credit, at the end, I'll give you an evaluation link that you can fill out. Just give us some feedback. And also, that's how you can request a CPE certificate. So very excited to be able to offer that as well. And let me pull up the agenda, and we'll just kind of talk through this a little bit. 1 second here. Gotta find my Zoom controls. They tend to disappear sometimes. 1 second. It's like, where are they? Where'd they go? All right, so gotta pull it up on the other window there. So, okay, 1 second. Here we go. Screen share. Okay, perfect. Sometimes it just takes a minute to get everything on the right place. You should be able to see the agenda now. So what we're going to be talking about today, understanding cyber threat trends, cybersecurity countermeasures, and how to protect your business. We'll talk about some cyber defense best practices. And then again, I'll talk a little bit about, from my perspective on the QuickBooks side, some recent QuickBooks scams and attacks that you need to be aware of if you're a QuickBooks user. This webinar is going to be, partly screen share, but it'll also be partly just kind of Q&A as well. Jason is a wealth of information on this topic, as you would imagine. And I've got a whole bunch of questions that I want to ask him. But let me just say this too. If you have questions during the webinar, you can use the chat panel to send us a chat. There's a question panel. If you just have a question, you could fire that off. As soon as you think of a question, go ahead and put it in the chat panel. It may be that we answer it as we go. If not, I will be watching those, and we'll be able to ask those sort of out loud. And then either Jason or I, depending on who the question is aimed to, we can go answer that question for you. Also, one of the questions we almost always get is, will this be recorded and will I get a link to it? Yes, you will. So we're recording this presentation. You will get a link to it afterwards. So, if you're scribbling notes very, very quickly, just know that you'll be able to see that and reference that as well. So let's go ahead, and I want to do the first poll before we get into the content. So this is a good poll just to kind of get us started, Jason. So let me get that over here, and I'm going to launch that poll. Everybody should see this now on your screen. If you're not a presenter, that is, if you're an attendee, you'll be able to see this. The first question is, have you ever experienced a cyber attack on your business? Yes, no, maybe I'm not sure, or I can neither confirm nor deny whether I have been attacked. So I'm going to give you a few more seconds to answer that, and then I'm going to share the results, and then we can kind of get into the content. All right, still got a few more people answering. Actually, we got it all. So perfect. All right, let me go ahead and end the poll. And Jason, I don't know if this is going to be surprising to you or not, but it looks like the results are 50-50. So about 50% of our audience has experienced a cyber attack and the other half has not. So that, I mean, I don't know. What do you think? Is that pretty typical?
Oh, it is. It definitely is. And I do personally believe it's not about if, it's about when. You know, I was looking into learning how to ride a motorcycle, and somebody who was teaching me said, you know, you will eventually lay this motorcycle down. And so I feel the same way about cyber attacks. You know, it's about preparation for the attack for when it occurs. And that's what we do, is help our clients prevent the worst parts of the attack from hurting your business.
Perfect. Well, let me do this because I think I didn't, I don't think I gave you a proper introduction. Tell the audience here, tell the listeners here, just a little bit about who you are and what you guys do at Reliable Technology. Because I mean, you are an expert in this field, so I want to make sure everybody knows that.
Thank you for that. So I personally have been doing cybersecurity for 32 years, all the way back to the Windows NT, Windows 3.1 days. Some of you may remember that. Some of you, it may be before you were even born. Believe it or not, just at the very beginning of the internet, in the very first few weeks of the internet, hacking attempts, that's when they first started. Um, so we've been doing that, and then we've been in business as a cybersecurity firm since 2007. So just about 18 years. We've won Inc. 5000's fastest growing businesses last year, and then again this year, and then
Hmm.
several other industry awards. But we're really proud to be a top 1% cybersecurity incident response and cybersecurity firm. And what I mean by that is that we do a lot of proactive work. Of course, that's what we prefer to do, is help prevent businesses from seeing the what happens with an attack and all of the negative aspects of that. But we do get involved from time to time. About once a year, we get a phone call from a company that says we've been hacked. Usually, we get a call from their attorney or their insurance company. We do a lot of work with like the FBI and the Secret Service, you know, the local field offices we have here. So we've seen a lot of, you know, unfortunate events, and we've prevented a lot as well.
Well, that's awesome. Well, let's dive into this, and again, feel free if you've got anything you want to share specifically on your end. But I'm curious if you can maybe just kind of talk to me and the rest of the folks here. What are some of the trends that you're seeing? Like, what are the attack trends that you guys are seeing all the time?
That's a great question. So, you know, hacking and cybersecurity events, incidents are occurring at an exponential rate, especially since COVID. Um, we've seen state-sponsored hacking, and then there's a proliferation of ransomware as a service. So I don't know if anybody's ever heard of ransomware as a service, but they've democratized hacking. So you no longer need to be an IT person or a security engineer. You can, it's literally like using an Amazon app. Overseas, you can log in. You get everything you need is like an application, and then you just send that out to prospective, you know, people, businesses that you would want to hack. And then the way the platform works is they keep a 10% fee. So if you are able to get like $1 million ransom, which is the average ransom request is over $1 million nowadays,
Wow.
the platform keeps 100,000, but you get a check for 900,000. So imagine what that would look like on the other end.
Yeah, no, I mean that's kind of insane. The fact that I think you called it ransomware as a service, effectively.
Yes.
That's insane. So, I mean, I really I don't want to know too much more. Quite honestly, it's pretty scary just to even think about that. Um, but is this one of those things where they are isolating or attacking specific people, or is it still kind of blind? I'm just spamming the world kind of thing with attacks. What are you seeing? More targeted stuff, or is it more brute force? Just attack the world.
We are seeing both. You know, there's always been the brute force. As soon as you plug in any kind of firewall or device to the internet, within seconds, it's already being attacked. But
Hmm.
there are strategic targeted attacks. You know, right now, a lot of people don't realize that over 51%, in some cases up to 90%, of successful hacking attempts where the hackers are able to get in and get access to computer systems is literally done through email. And we've all got these, phishing email attempts. But I think a lot of folks don't realize that that's literally the way that the hackers get in. And in most cases, by the time that you realize your computer or your servers are encrypted, that's a really bad day when you wake up. It's like a D-Day. The hackers have actually been inside of your network on average between 3 and 6 months. And
Hmm.
they've spent that time like looking through, getting logs, looking at your IP addresses, trying to find more credentials. They're setting the stage and making a plan for their special day when they're going to take everything down.
Okay, and this is especially important from my background. I mean, I've never been what I would call super like deep into cybersecurity. It's never been like my profession or my title, but I've been on the company, the technology side behind the scenes, as a buyer oftentimes too, right? Like, hey, I'm trying to, get the right IT company in. But one of the things that, historically, it's like backups are super important. But if your retention is, if you're only like retaining up to 30 days worth of real time backups, but they've hacked you 3, 6 months ago, any clean backups might have already been archived and out of the system. So I assume that's something you talk to folks about.
Indeed. So for our clients, we put in a software system called immutable backups. And so you hit on it. Actually, the last three incident responses we've done since COVID, in every single case, their previous IT company or in-house IT had good backups, but the backups themselves were encrypted, which basically negated the whole point of having a backup to begin with. So we've seen that. And then another one I'll say that a common thought that comes out is why us? We have only, 50 employees, 20, maybe it's 500. The big companies get hacked too, and we work with banks and several other institutions that you wouldn't expect to get hacked. But to be honest, the companies that the hackers really want are the small businesses because they feel like they're low hanging fruit. And so it's easy to get a quick insurance payoff.
That, frankly, it's a little shocking to hear that because I mean, and that's a little bit of a paradigm shift for me because I would always think, okay, well, you've got these billion-dollar companies, they have the money, let me go after them. I think there's historically been, maybe it sounds like it's a myth that I'm too small for people to worry about. I mean, I'm not making enough money for people to ransom. So it sounds like you're really flipping that on upside down in terms of how we should be thinking about this.
Indeed, and most of our clients have cybersecurity insurance, and if you don't have that, I highly recommend it. It's actually very reasonably priced. But because of the fact that there's so many folks out there that have cyber insurance and typically have at least a $1 million face value, we recommend a $2 million face value, by the way, because usually the ransom requests start anywhere from 1 to 1.5 million. Those can be negotiated down. Recently, we just negotiated 1.4 down to 500,000. That's paid usually in Bitcoin. It has to get OFAC checks by the FBI to make sure you're not funding like a terrorist organization, for example, or one of the blacklisted countries like North Korea. But um, but the other thing that a lot of folks don't think about is the cost to recover. There's a lot of things to think about there. Usually, the average cost to recover, just in terms of IT cost, is about $1 million. Now that can be paid for by your insurance, and they will cover it, certain services,
Hmm.
but it's just a piece of the decision-making process of how much insurance to get.
So you're saying like a typical ransomware attack that might cost you literally $1 million. That's just the hard cost, but then there's the other cost of like trying to get everything back up and running that I assume that the cybersecurity criminals are not helping you with. So you've got to like figure out how to recover.
Yes, I will tell you one thing though. Would you like to see what an actual piece of ransomware looks like?
Yeah, sure.
Let me. I don't want to get
As
ahead
long
of
as it's not getting downloaded to my computer, I'm good.
the. No. Let's see. Are you? Let's see. Can y'all see that? Not
You're,
sure.
yeah, we can see it now.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay, so on the day where you're actually encrypted, your servers and your computers, your desktops, your laptops, your employees will come in, and this is something like this, not this exact one. There's millions of different types of encryption, malware software that gets deployed. This is a wanted decryptor 2.0. This is a very common one, but basically everybody would come in and see this on their screen. One thing that a lot of people don't think about too is that you're down, and imagine being down for 3 weeks on average. Even if everything's perfect and you got all your systems in place, you got backups to restore, maybe you don't even need to consider paying the ransom. It's still going to take 3 weeks of downtime. And if your phones are voice over IP, they may not even be working. Your email's definitely not working unless it's in 365. Some of your inside CRMs and a line of business applications, if you're running a QuickBooks server, for example, that could be down. So imagine that, but then also think about your employees when they're looking at this going, shoot, I wonder if I'm going to have a job in 3 weeks once everything comes back up. So we've seen, usually just from an employee perspective, usually a 20% attrition in headcount immediately after an attack like this. But this is kind of what it looks like. But I wanted to show you this actually. Oh, this is how the ransomware as a service works. But here's an interesting one. So they'll also so maybe you have all your data back up and you're not worried about doing the restore and getting access to your data, but we've had clients that actually still pay the ransom just because they don't want their information, their client lists, the fact that they've been hacked, whatever confidential files they have will be published on the dark web unless you pay the hacker to delete your data off. And they typically do. I know it sounds crazy, but there is kind of like an honor amongst thieves. So, but here is a page. Literally, this is a page from the dark web. This is a dark web browser. And most people can't get to this. Like, you can't Google to this page. But these are legitimate. Like, this is an actual screenshot. These are the domain names of companies that were hacked earlier in March when we created this PowerPoint presentation. And if they don't pay the ransom within 2 to 3 days, their information will be released.
Wow.
Look, I guess I wanted to show you this. This is you mentioned the question. So I guess the hackers aren't going to help you restore your data. No, they will send you a video of it being deleted, but they will send you a cybersecurity report. And this is what this looks like. This is literally from a client, a new client that we got that was hacked. After we paid the ransom, they sent this to us and said, "Oh, by the way, this is basically how we got in. We were able to get to your Veeam server. We had full access to the critical servers and workstations." So they won't tell you everything, but they'll give you enough feedback that where the big holes are in the environment.
That is fascinating. So, I mean, obviously these people aren't doing us a favor here, but after the fact, they're trying to help us. That's kind of shocking.
Here's another thing that's crazy is that they kind of see it as a business. We picture from the movies, people in black hoodies and they're in a dark room with matrix code on the screens. But really, it's individuals that look like you and me. They have nice clothes. They probably drive a nice car, and this is their job. And they just come to work. And so they do have like a help desk you can call for technical support if the encryption keys don't work. And by the way, the FBI is not going to help you. They do have decryptors for some of these things, but they never work. So you do have to work with their help desk and their technical support to make sure everything's decrypted.
All I can say is, I'm continually being shocked by this conversation. So, very, very scary. So, okay, so these folks are out there business. This is a business for them, not just people in hoodies sitting in a dark basement. I mean, they go to work, they clock in, they do their hacking, and they go home. I can just imagine them, at the dinner table at Thanksgiving, and they're like, the mom's like, "Hey, so what do you do for a living?" "Well, I'm a cybersecurity expert. I'm a cyber." I'm sure they're probably not telling their parents that they're cyber criminals, but I work in technology. I work in IT,
Right.
something very vague and general like that. Wow. So yeah, so you mentioned the cost, right? And so obviously there's insurance to help with this. There's the ransomware cost. Um, the fact that you get involved in that as an IT company on the negotiation to get the ransom down, I mean, I guess that's a good thing, right? Is the fact that you can, you know, negotiate down from wherever somebody might say, I expect you to pay X dollars, but $1 million. So obviously that's a cost. That's not good. What's the cost of doing nothing? You know?
Well, one statistic we didn't discuss early on was that 60% of businesses that have a cybersecurity incident never recover. So I guess it would be potentially the cost of whatever you have invested in your business.
Mm, yeah, that's that could be a lot. So that's I mean, again, this is we're not trying to scare people with this topic, but for me, thinking as someone who might be listening and watching, hopefully this is a wake up call. I mean, I've been in and around this topic, and I know that it's something that we need to be doing, and I'm sure that a lot of folks on the call, they're probably or either if they're the owner or the IT person in their company, or maybe they're working for somebody that takes care of this stuff. I'm sure somebody's thinking about this, but it's worth asking the question, are we doing anything about this? What are we doing to protect ourselves? So we're going to have a whole section of the webinar where we talk about specifically what you can do. But let me go ahead and launch our next poll and get some feedback from everybody that's on the call right now. So I'm going to launch this poll. And the question is, what worries you the most? So based on the stuff that Jason has already shared, go ahead and take a few moments to answer this. What worries you the most? Credit card data being stolen, the threat of customer data being compromised. Maybe you've got your logins or your employee logins that are now exposed on the dark web that people can go in and get into all your accounts. The whole concept of a ransomware attack, or maybe the backups that you've had, maybe not working, or maybe they're not sufficient. Like you said, they're encrypted. And so you get around time to trying to use them or feeling like you need to use them and they just don't work. So got a couple more people. Yep, let's go ahead and show the actually a couple more here, a couple more coming in. Okay, all right. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll, and I'm going to share the results. So here's the results of that poll. So 64%, the biggest worry is the threat of customer data being compromised. So that's interesting. So it's not as much about paying $1 million in ransomware, but it's more about, hey, I've got my customer data that I'm have a responsibility to protect, and suddenly it's compromised. That would definitely be bad. And then second was, yeah, just a ransomware attack in general. So how does that jive with what you have seen and experienced, Jason, the threat of customer data being compromised?
You know, I appreciate the concern. It once by the time you realize you've been hacked, they've already copied off of your servers, sometimes in some cases terabytes of data. So that is a big concern. The other area where we see it, quite frankly, is with employees as well, where we've literally seen this where somebody who's on the bubble or whatever copied off client databases. We've actually had somebody leave and start a competitive company, but they downloaded all of the inbound leads and prospects and maybe some of the best customers. So, and then sometimes it's accidental too, just leaving a laptop available or lost laptop and it wasn't, didn't have a good username and password. We've seen that as well. But we have tools that can help prevent data loss prevention that we can put in place that can at least give you an alert if someone's copying over sensitive data to a thumb drive, or if you're seeing somebody that has a Google Drive and a Dropbox and they're sending stuff off of your 365 from SharePoint. There's certain triggers we can put in place that would give you an alert to that, and there's some we can just completely prevent altogether. It just depends on how secure you want to be in that regard.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned employees, because like we did a webinar last month and we talked about embezzlement, and and how people get into QuickBooks and embezzle money from a company. And one of the unfortunate things we had to bring up in that webinar was that it's an embezzlement. A lot of times it is somebody internal, right? It's somebody on the team, somebody on the staff, that has access to accounting and the money, right? That's makes it a little bit more tempting when the money's there to go get. So when I think of cybersecurity and like people doing this type of stuff, I think it's outside people. It's people that I don't know. It's people that are across the ocean in some other continent, in fact, that are doing this work. But it sounds like it can be, in terms of cyber theft, somebody inside.
Absolutely. It's in a lot of cases. In fact, that's the most common. That's one that's it's challenged to overcome because we can lock things down so tightly that it becomes difficult to conduct business. So there's a balance between like how flexible do we want to be versus how secure do we want to be, and they're not always mutually exclusive, but sometimes they are. Another thing that we see is, and this just happens by accident, but you make certain people global admins on your 365 account. Just because you're starting out, things are moving fast. The owner's still a global admin. If the credentials get out or shared or whatever, now this person, either it's a hacker or employee, has full access to everything. So
Mm.
that's another vector path.
Wow, that's terrible. All right, well, let's talk about what you can do about it. So just dumb it down for me. As an owner, how can I protect myself? Like, what are some of the common countermeasures that you help companies put in place to protect ourselves? And by the way, as you're thinking about that question, just want to say it out loud to the audience. If you do have any questions, use the question panel. Send us a question. Let us know you've got something that's on your mind, and we'd love to answer those questions as well.
So are you able to see my screen?
Yeah, top 10 cyber considerations for business.
So one is the one that we just talked about. I would go through your 365 or G Suite, whoever your cloud provider is. If you have a local domain by chance, I would just do a comb through permissions. That's a free thing that you can do, or have your IT person or company do, is just have them double check the permissions and make sure it's all still right. We try to do that once a year, just kind of comb through internally and externally with our clients. Are all these credentials still correct? Because people move roles and some people leave, and some of the stuff gets orphaned. So that's a free one. Um, one that we did kind of touch on earlier too was immutable backups. Just make sure you're backed up. First of all, do you have backups? Is everything being backed up? And if it is, do you have a local copy and a remote copy? And then are at least one of your backups immutable, just meaning they cannot be changed, they can't be encrypted. So that's just a question. You definitely want to have an online backup as well. I'm gonna skip this one for a second. The other free one you can do, I'm assuming most people have a cloud here, like G Suite or 365. Make sure you're using multi-factor. You may be using it as the business leader or whatnot, but maybe not everybody is compliant, and it really just takes one person that's not compliant that has a simple password, like password 123, and then they're in. So that's an easy one to check, and just have somebody look into, make sure your cloud systems are all MFA. The
So
next one would be,
let me
sorry, go
ask
ahead.
you, let me ask you
Yep.
about that just for clarification. So, I mean, I think,
Oh,
things started out, it's like just an email that gets sent to your computer or whatever that you get a code on. Then there was SMS text messaging, and then I know there's like authentication apps on the phone that you can use. So when it comes to like that MFA or 2FA or 10FA or whatever you might want to call it, what's the good, better, best when it comes to that?
and thank you for that question. Actually, I really appreciate that. That was a good place to hone in. So, first of all, first and foremost, if you're not using a strong password that's changed on some regular basis, at least a couple times a year, I know that's painful. I feel like it's painful for myself personally, but make sure you're using a strong password, which is more than 8 characters, uppercase, lowercase, number, and a special character. So that's one. That's step number one. That's free. And then the second one would be like a SMS code. That's where you get a text or an email. Actually, a text is less secure. Email is more secure if it's secured with a full MFA app. The second level is like we all have these, but it's like the little round, the codes that change every 60 seconds. It's called a
Yep.
one-time password. You can use Microsoft Authenticator or Google Authenticator. That's one of the top tiers. I recommend that as a minimum, I would do this version of MFA. But the highest would be if you're on a if you're on a Microsoft platform, is use Microsoft Authenticator with a two-digit response code. So it's like a two-way MFA, if that makes sense. And that's your best case scenario.
Hmm.
And then having everyone do that, that actually costs nothing if you're on 365.
Interesting. And so, a couple things that are shocking about what you just said is I would have assumed that SMS or text message based codes that I get that I'm putting into something on a website, that would be pretty secure. So, how is that not secure? How is that like not the best?
So we have the FBI come out to our office like once a year and kind of give us like tell us the latest things you guys are seeing. When we had them out this spring, they said, look, CISA, which is the organization of the federal government that kind of states, here's our level set for cybersecurity standards as a nation. They downgraded SMS last year because of the rampant proliferation of SMS SIM cards being duplicated um, in mass. So let's say I wanted to hack you, Brad. It'd be very easy for me to find somebody that works at AT&T or Verizon. I could figure out, who hosts your cell phone, have them duplicate your SIM card, send it to me in the mail. I give them, $500 or $1,000 for your SIM card. And then when you get that SMS code, it actually comes to my burner phone. So now I've got a copy of it as well.
Wow. I guess if there's enough money involved in something, people find a way. That's interesting. So uh, there's a question from the audience that I want to bring up here just a second. But before I go to the question, so you mentioned like for example, Google Authenticator, Microsoft Authenticator, and what was the top tier that you recommend?
Was Microsoft Authenticator with the two-digit response code. So
Two-digit response code.
it does a challenge with your Outlook for two digits. You have to type them into the application.
Okay, I've seen like I'm logging into some Google-based thing, and it says, hey, it's is it number 46, 32, or 18? And I
Same thing.
go, is that basically what you're talking about?
That's the exact same thing. Yes.
Okay, got it. Interesting. Okay, so before you go to the rest of the bullet points there, one of the questions from the audience was, what are your feelings about password vault, password keepers like Keeper, like LastPass, like One Protect, and I know there's a few other ones.
This is a hotly debated topic in the cybersecurity world. There's a lot of benefit to password managers. It actually encourages people to have stronger passwords and then have separate passwords. A lot of folks may use the same password for 10 different platforms. You really don't want to do that, but it's so difficult to remember 10 different passwords. So having a password keeper, is good. We use Bitwarden here. Um, I will say the risk involved with using a password manager is if they get hacked, and they do. LastPass was hacked, I think, 2 or 3 years ago. Very embarrassing for them. I'm surprised they're still in business, honestly, but that is the risk that you run. Now, the way that you can overcome that risk if you do use a password manager is don't put your one-time passwords or your tertiary authentication mechanism inside of the password manager, which you can actually do. There are small scenarios where we have to do that because we have a group login for something, and then you can't have one person with the OTP. You have to put it in the platform so everybody can get access to it. So there are some one-off scenarios you need to think about, that you could do. But that's probably the best case scenario is having a platform like Bitwarden.
Hmm. Okay. Wow. This is interesting. All right. Well, keep going. This is fascinating.
Okay, so antivirus. If you're using Microsoft 365, you probably, I'm saying there's a 50-50 shot that you have Windows Defender for Business. If you don't, it's like $2 a month per person. Uh, if It's hard to believe, but it is the best antivirus in the world right now. If you had told me this 5 years ago, I never would have believed that Microsoft could produce the best antivirus, but they have, and and this is what everybody's headed to. Now, beyond that, we also recommend what's called EDR. And without getting into too much detail, it's basically a firewall for your computer. It sees the telemetry data between computers and can tell if somebody's moving sideways in your network. That's what gives us an alert that there's some hacking activity happening and it can stop it. Um, MDR is basically just EDR that's monitored. That's really what we deploy for our clients. Basically, all that information is going back to a security operations center where you have people eyes on glass 24/7, 365. They're the people that'll call you at like 2 a.m. saying, hey, we shut down your server because it looked like somebody was trying to get in. So does that help? That second bullet point, does that explain that pretty well?
Yeah, I think so. If anybody has a follow-up question, definitely put it in the question and let us know.
MDR can be had really cheap, by the way. That's another one, $6 a month per person. It's very affordable. Network security, we see some clients, new clients that we get that have like a TP link, something off the shelf from like Best Buy. You really, even though it says firewall in the front, that's not really a firewall from our perspective. So putting in enterprise grade tools is actually not that expensive. You can get into a great firewall between $500 and $1,000 just depending on the size of your site. I mean, they do go up into the 100,000 range, but a lot of people are surprised at how cheap you can deploy like enterprise grade tools. So if you don't have I would take a look at your firewall, make sure you have a good one there for your office.
Okay.
Email
So
filtering,
let me ask
go
you
ahead.
about the firewall part just a little bit.
Okay.
So you mentioned at the very beginning, like sometimes there's a balance here, right? Like we could lock things down so tightly that it makes it really, really hard to do anything. My experience with firewalls is a little bit similar in that, if we close down traffic, which I guess at some level, a firewall is trying to limit traffic in or out. Can it be too tight where certain like systems that I'm trying to use don't work, or whether it's VoIP phone systems or QuickBooks that might be integrated with some other system outside of the internet. What are your thoughts on that kind of topic?
It totally is. I think that's why you need a great like cybersecurity engineer working alongside you to make sure that it's set up in a way that gives you the most security you know, without taking away too much flexibility in the environment. Now, in many cases, you may have like compliance requirements. We have some clients going through TSAX compliance right now, and it's so secure. Literally, every single computer has to be on its own port of the firewall, and the firewall sees every traffic between every single computer. So it's extremely secure. We would never do that unless it's required by compliance. But um, you know, it just depends on what the vision of the organization is and how secure you want your environment. But even at a low level, just doing deep packet inspection and having a good like VPN on your firewall, just having those two things would raise your security posture dramatically.
Okay, got it. All right. So I think you were about to go into email filtering. So tell us about that.
Just due to the fact that a significant majority, at least two-thirds of incidences that actually get through successful cyber attacks come through email. We recommend using a spam filter. The one that comes 365 is not bad, but we usually go up a level from that and use Proofpoint. I highly recommend Proofpoint, but there's a lot of good ones out there, to be honest. And so if you don't have one of those, I highly recommend it. You can knock out 98% of your spam before employees even see it, if that makes sense.
Okay, so it's kind of like my Gmail, for example. It might flag something as spam, and then I can go in there and look at that and make it not spam or delete it, archive it, whatever. But the spam filtering you're talking about is filtering it out before it even gets into my inbox.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
which is probably pretty helpful because I know, um, you know, you talk about phishing testing and that kind of stuff, where the system is like testing to see if you can detect, this is a phishing attempt. But even the best of us can get fooled, and we'll talk a little bit about that when I talk about some of the QuickBooks vulnerability, if you will. Um, but that's it's in the inbox, and I'm clicking on it. Somebody's clicking on it, and that's when the damage starts happening.
It is. So that's how they get in, and you open up a PDF or a Word document. It looks like something legit, and then on the back end, it's got malicious code.
Okay. So what's interesting about that is, I mean, again, I think we all get these, probably 10 a day at least. Hey, it's a thing from DocuSign, and it's like click here to see your payment remittance, and I'm like, well, I'm not expecting a payment. Why would DocuSign be sending me this? This doesn't make any sense, or um, hey, your payment failed. Click this link, or hey, we couldn't deliver your package. Here's a PDF or your whatever. I mean, there's so many of these things, but I really appreciate the fact that, and we probably need this, is the filtering before it gets to the inbox so people aren't clicking on it, which opens up a lot of the problems.
Absolutely. And so actually the next one is a perfect dovetail. So the next, since you can't knock out 100%, you can get 98% about. The 2%, usually are very risky ones. Those are some of the pernicious emails that make through. You deal with that through cybersecurity awareness training, and you mentioned it earlier, like phishing training, so we can actually send fake emails, see who clicked on it. But it's good just to have everybody go through the process of doing cybersecurity awareness training, and a lot of, especially larger organizations, already do this. But this is something any size organization can subscribe to, and just have your employees go through a 30-minute cyber awareness training class.
Yep. No, it's fascinating. One of my favorites, by the way, with the spam emails, is one of my favorites is the like, hey, I need to change my payroll information. Can you just let me know, where I need to go to, update my payroll data? And it's like literally from me to me, or it's to one of my employees, and they're like, yeah, this doesn't sound like Brad at all. So I think the wisdom in that training is like, if it doesn't sound right, it's probably not right. If it doesn't look legit, it's probably not legit. But I feel like people are getting better and better at that stuff. So um tell us a little bit more about the dark web stuff, dark web monitoring, dark web scanning. I know you have some tools, but what are the kind of things that you would find if you helped a company do a dark web scan or monitor?
So we can take anybody's domain and do a free scan on it. Anybody that's interested, we'll take your domain and let you know what all the credentials are out there. A lot of people are shocked when they see it. To be honest, I used to use this as a prospecting tool just to let people know, hey, your credentials are out there. I realized pretty quickly they thought we were hacking them, and that wasn't the case. So we stopped doing that. But all of our clients, we do dark web monitoring, so that way, if their credentials do get compromised, say LinkedIn gets hacked, or maybe your gym or bank, a lot of us use similar usernames and passwords for all these different platforms. And so if any username with your domain name for the one that we're monitoring gets out there, we'll see it and then send an alert saying, hey, you might want to reset this credential. We can see this username and passwords out there. Um, and by the way, I'll just add this. A lot of like Microsoft, I've noticed, and especially Google, you'll start to notice, and even on your iPhone or whatnot, they're starting to do dark web monitoring themselves, and they'll send you an alert saying, hey, this you're trying to use a username and password that's compromised. So that's where that comes from.
Wow, it's fascinating. Fascinating. Well, let me go ahead and pull up the third poll here. I just want to kind of get some feedback based on what we've talked about so far. Here's the third poll, should be on your screen now, and that is which countermeasures do you need to put into place? Endpoint detection and response, spam filtering, multi-factor authentication, immutable backups. Those are the backups that can't be changed or encrypted by a hacker. Enterprise grade firewall, dark web scanning to see if your credentials are online somehow. Go ahead and take a little bit of time and answer that. And then again, we'll kind of let Jason share his perspectives based on what you guys say. Couple more answers are coming in here. And by the way, while people are answering that, I mean, this is truly is fascinating. I mean, it's like, I thought I knew some of this stuff a couple years back, but this stuff changes pretty frequently in the technology space. And I imagine, we haven't even talked about AI, but I've got to imagine that there's probably AI malware out there that's doing it for you as well, right? All right, let me show the results here. I'm going to end the poll. I'm going to share the results. So the biggest countermeasure to put in place from the audience's perspective is, first off, the immutable backups at 60%, and then multi-factor authentication. Those are the two highest. Yeah, I mean, not surprising, honestly, but is that surprising to you in terms of like how people are thinking about what they need to think, what they need to focus on? Or maybe a different question to ask would be, would you, like, based on the results here, would you advise people to not think about that first, but think about something else first in terms of like highest risk, highest reward?
I mean, I think this is spot on. Mutable backups would be step number one, MFA step number two. I think that honestly, just doing those two things probably chops your risk down at least by a third to half. It would be a dramatic improvement to whatever your current security posture is. I did notice we've got a question in the chat too, Brad. I don't know if you want to, if we should address that
Okay,
one.
yeah, absolutely. Let me stop sharing. And so yeah, the question was, how can you require your clients to follow cybersecurity guidelines? I had a QBO client who was hacked through another QuickBooks Pro advisor whose client was hacked. So it's like a one client that's vulnerable that somehow gets into another client's through maybe multiple channels. So yeah, I mean, so maybe the big picture here is, how do you help your clients and make sure that they're doing these types of things too?
We meet with our clients on a quarterly basis to kind of go over their current security posture. And just like human beings, businesses are works in progress, constantly improving and growing and trying to chop down as much risk. And it is a cat and mouse game because there's new hacks and vulnerabilities coming out every year. So helping our clients stay on top of that's one way. Another one is setting up a plan in place, and then trying to look at what makes sense for that organization. Now, one thing I will tell you, so we can't, you know, require our clients to have great. Obviously, we want them to have the most secure platform, just like your doctor would. I want you to diet, exercise, and take this cholesterol pill or whatever. But um, I'll say we run into this a lot where our clients are getting hacked, and we get a lot of referrals that way. And the way that it comes about is, hey, so and so is trying to email me, and we're not getting it. Well, we research into the issue and find out, well, our security systems blocked it, and we've literally been asked by a client before, well, can you just allow their thing through? And I tell them no, because the system did what it's supposed to do. We can send you a screenshot of the language for sure, but we cannot let that system in because it would literally be allowing an infection, like a malware or infection into your system, and we just couldn't. We cannot legally actually do that.
Interesting, interesting. And then the other question was, in terms of antivirus protection, have you ever heard of Cylance, Cylance, Cylance for antivirus?
Yes, that's a very good one.
Okay, it's short and simple. There it is. Yes, he's heard about it, and it's very good. So good job. All right, cool. Let me, Jason, any final words before I kind of jump into the QuickBooks topics?
Absolutely. I just want to mention one thing since you touched on it about AI. Last week we had a client whose employee used AI, like a chat GPT type AI, it was generative, and had it generate malicious code on their computer to send in SQL injections to their database server. Thankfully, within the first few milliseconds with our MDR platform, it shut that PC down. We got an alert. We called the owner. Come to find out, it was the owner's son. That was a really difficult conversation, but we were able to stop that one. The other one was we had a client last year The leader of the organization did a lot of speaking engagements. Someone used an AI to scan in every speech this owner did, and then used it to duplicate their voice. And then they called the CFO and said, "Hey, we need to change the wiring number for this account, whatnot." And the CFO believed it and had worked with this gentleman for 20 years. Anyway, she wrote it down with a pencil and forgot a digit to the new number. She was getting ready to wire about $100,000, and she wrote it down wrong, thankfully, because then she called back on his cell phone and said, "Sorry, I didn't write down the account number correctly." And he said, "I don't know what you're talking about."
Oh
Now
my
we had a
goodness.
call, yeah, we had a call recording of this. The only reason I wanted to mention this, Brad, is because if you're not doing challenge responses, so if somebody calls you and says, "I need you to wire money or do this or that," you need to have a system in place, like where I'm going to pick up the phone and call you on your cell phone number to make sure it's actually you. And maybe you even have something like your bank has with a secret security question. Just wanted to mention that.
Interesting. That is just fascinating. Again, just fascinating, shocking at the same time. So, all right, cool. Well, let me go ahead and move. I'm going to move on to some of the QuickBooks specific types of things that we've seen. And again, just for some context here, we're a QuickBooks company. We do QuickBooks bookkeeping, consulting, troubleshooting. We do also all things QuickBooks. And you have to imagine with the number of clients of ours that use QuickBooks, we get calls, we get emails, and they're like, "I don't understand what this means. Why did Intuit call me asking me about this?" So we hear about these things not only because we're QuickBooks users, but because of our clients are getting these same types of things. So I want to kind of let you know what are the highlights, what are the more common ones that we see, so that you can be on your guard and know what to do if any of these things happen to you. So probably some of the three most common hacks, if you will, or malware sort of attempts related to call and emails, and then we'll talk about warning pop-ups and then credential scams. So first thing I want to pull up here is the call and email types of scams. So if you think about it like this, in America, Intuit QuickBooks has an over 80% market share. So if you just randomly call 100 small businesses, I would say about 80 of those 100 use QuickBooks. So it's a highly lucrative, market to try to scam. And so what somebody will say on the phone is, "Hey, this is QuickBooks calling. We're getting alerts that your QuickBooks isn't updating to the latest version. When did you last update your QuickBooks?" Now, if I want to say if you're smart, but that's not the right word. It's like more of like, if you're thinking about it, why would QuickBooks call you to say that your QuickBooks isn't updating? It's a little weird, but again, it's a law of numbers. And Jason, I'm sure you've seen that too. It's like some of these hacks, it's just a law of numbers. If you do 1,000 of these, you're going to get somebody that's like, "Oh, I don't know, let me tell you." And so what they're trying to do is to have you go, "Oh my goodness, well, I don't want my QuickBooks to expire. What do I need to do?" And they're like, "Well, all you have to do is upgrade. If you'll give us your credit card information, we'll process your upgrade and you'll be back in business," right? The second one is more of an email based type of thing, but it's the same concept. It's the same message. You're going to get a message, something along the lines of, "Your QuickBooks subscription is about to expire. If you don't upgrade or renew your subscription by some date, your QuickBooks is going to stop working." And for those in the QuickBooks world, that those concepts are actually true. Like if you're subscribing to QuickBooks and you don't pay your subscription, you will, lose access. So it's not an it is a realistic thing that somebody might be proposing here. The question is, who's saying it? Why are they saying it? When are they saying it? And how do you know it's right or wrong? So here's the concept. If it's an email or a call, first off, Intuit's not going to call you and say your subscription's about to expire. That's never going to happen. Email, yes, maybe it is possible for them to email you saying your credit card is being declined or whatever. Okay. Don't click on the links. Don't give them your credit card number over the phone. I can promise you it is not Intuit QuickBooks calling. But here's the cool part. As a QuickBooks solution provider, we do have a direct relationship with Intuit, and we have people that literally can say, here's the client's license number. Can you tell us, is the paid status good? When is the renewal? And we'll get a response back, and they'll basically tell us, no, it's not about to expire. They're paid up until March of next year. Okay. So give us a call if you're not sure. We can check your subscription status and make sure that it's not somebody trying to scam you. Okay. By the way, here's another example of that same type of email. It is, hey, your QuickBooks subscription renewal's up. It's from Intuit QuickBooks. And notice the email address, Intuit at qbocare.com. Okay. Well, guess what? qbocare.com is not an Intuit email address. It is not an Intuit domain. It is a scam. So also, if you look at that type of email, there's oftentimes they will give you an 888 or an 800 number to call. The 800 number to call on that email is not Intuit. Somebody that you call and pick up the phone and call, they'll say thanks for calling Intuit, but they're not Intuit. What's interestingly about that is Intuit has had the same support number for a very, very long time, and it really hasn't ever changed. So I'm going to put that number on the screen here in just a second so you can write it down. But one of the things, Jason, that I've heard from folks that are trying to help us like decipher these bogus emails, and maybe you can actually, for 5-10 seconds, kind of explain what this is all about. But if you look at the headers on an email or the original of the email, sometimes it'll tell you a little bit more about the source of where that email came from. And that's a way of verifying, did it come from an actual legitimate intuit.com address, or if it's some other bogus one. So that's something that I think is kind of interesting. Here's another one, which I think is fascinating, and that is, and this probably happens more on the desktop side, but you could be using QuickBooks Desktop, and then there could be a pop-up on your screen that says, warning, an unexpected error occurred, call support. But again, notice that 833 weird number down there. That is not an Intuit phone number. The Intuit support number is 800-446-8848. That's their support number that's been there forever. That is the only support number you ever need to know if you want to call Intuit. But again, if you get a pop-up, it's because somebody has probably clicked on one of those spam emails that Jason talked about. That prompt probably embedded something on that computer, and now at some point in the future, it's popping up this warning message as part of a malware attempt. So again, if you're not sure, if it doesn't look right, give us a call. We can help get in there and troubleshoot some of that stuff as well. And the last one that I want to point out is some ones that we actually had reported recently, where there are payroll scams and bill payment scams that are happening within the QuickBooks system. And it's not like somebody has hacked into it, okay? But Jason alluded to the fact that you've got passwords that are probably out on the dark web, if you're reusing passwords at all, or if they're guessable. And most likely, your password is on the internet. Somebody is using a brute force attack to try to log into your QuickBooks. But I've heard a lot of different things about going in and basically changing the direct deposit information for employees, or going in and changing the direct deposit information for vendors. So you're getting a bill, you're paying the bill, and you think you're paying your vendor, but what you're really doing is paying somebody else because that direct deposit information was changed. And really the challenge here is the QuickBooks Online Audit Trail is insufficient to give you the details of what happened, but it can show you that an employee was changed or a vendor's information was changed, and that could be a flag that something was changed that might give you some warning if you're, again, paying attention to the audit trails. We're almost out of time here, so I just want to wrap up and close here, but there are reset your password at least every 60 days. Make sure that they're unique. Don't reuse passwords. And Intuit has on their login screens the fact that they now are enabling pass keys, which again is another high level security mechanism. Definitely encourage you to take a look at that. But again, just because we are out of time, I do want to bring up two last slides here just to kind of make sure that you know what your resources are. Okay. If any of this stuff is interesting to you and you're like, I really need to know a little bit more about the cybersecurity concepts, ways you can protect yourself, the affordable things that you can do to make sure that you're covered, definitely reach out to Jason and his team at Reliable Technology Services. They've been around since 2007. They know their stuff. I've got the phone number on there as well as reliabletsi.com. And you guys, if you're interested, you can reach out to Reliable Technology for a cybersecurity audit. And Jason and his team can look at your situation and basically come back and say, here's the good news, here's the not so good news, here's what you can do about it. And then also VARC Solutions, if you're needing any help with QuickBooks, let us know. We do bookkeeping, cleanups, migrations, CFO stuff, but more importantly is related to this topic is we want to make sure that you're using correct roles and permissions in QuickBooks, that you're closing your books to lock down prior year's records or prior period records. There's a couple different things that we can help with from a security audit perspective. Let us know if we can help you with that. We'd love to take care of you on the QuickBooks side while Jason takes care of you on the IT technology side. And then I'm going to pull up the last poll here just as we wrap up. I know some people are probably on the verge of needing to get on to a next call, but let me go ahead and just pull this up here. Give us some feedback. Which of the following would you be interested in? Would you be interested in a cybersecurity audit? Would you be interested in a QuickBooks security audit? Maybe both. Or hey, you feel like you got everything covered? Maybe neither, not at this time. Go ahead and take a couple seconds to fill that out. And then for those of you that are needing or wanting CPE credits, I'm going to give you the link to the evaluation form here in just a moment. And then you could fill that out, give us some feedback, and then that's how we'll know that you're looking for a CPE certificate. All right. So I'm gonna wait just a couple more seconds here. Looks like a couple more people responding to that. Okay. Looks like we have some good interest in both as well. Okay. All right. I'm going to go ahead and end that poll. And then again, Jason and I will follow up with you depending on what you answered on that poll. And then for those, again, that you are needing CP credit, I'm going to put the link in the chat. So in the chat panel, I've just shared the Google form with our post-class evaluation. If you don't see the chat, or if you want to call us after the fact or email us because you need the link, let us know. And again, we will send the recording out of this so that you'll have access to it. I'm going to go ahead and stop the sharing, stop the recording at this point. And Jason, thank you so much for sharing your wealth of knowledge here. We really appreciate you.
Brad, thanks for the invitation. And by the way, we can sleep at night knowing that you guys have our back when it comes to our QuickBooks stuff. Thank you for everything you guys do. And thank you everyone that attended the call.
Absolutely. Thank you.